Welcome to Black and Blue Podcast, where we talk about Black and Blue Garage. This is my first attempt at doing a podcast, and I have no guests. So you will all have to listen to me talk about Black and Blue Garage, I suppose. Earlier this year, we wrapped up Season 2 of Black and Blue Garage, where I built a 1988 Jeep Comanche using Chevy and Ford parts. I just kind of want to talk a little about the origin story of the Jeep Comanche and why I decided to build one. So feel free to kick back, watch this video, turn the screen off and listen to it while you do your dishes or you're out in the shop working on your favorite project. I think it was back in 2018, which doesn't seem that long ago, that I finally had a job good enough to where I could actually pay my money to buy some cool toys and some parts for those cool toys and put them together to have something really fun to drive around. At the time, Polaris had previously came out with a Polaris Sportsman's Ace, which was kind of like a side-by-side, but it wasn't because it was a single-seater based off of the Polaris Sportsman's quad bike that had been in circulation for quite some time. This vehicle reminded me a lot of the Honda Pilots or Honda Odyssey go-karts that I would see driving around when I was a little kid, but we could never afford anything like that when I was little. And to be honest, we couldn't even afford like Power Wheels cars until my younger brother was born, and even then I think we found one and fixed it up. So I think I was in 2018, that would make me, I might have been 27 years old, and I wanted to do some off-roading because the only wheeling that I had done is in a old 96 Chevy Silverado or a 2006 Nissan Sentra, believe it or not. And that's another story for another day. Let me know if that's something that you'd like to learn about, because it's quite a funny story. So the only off-roading I had done are some old vehicles that I had, and decided that it was time to get me a new toy to mess around off-road in. At this time, I had built a couple of cool RC trucks and really fell in love with the building part of it, more so than the driving the RC trucks around. And so I knew right from the start that building an off-road vehicle would be more fun than just buying one that's already ready to go, like a Polaris Sportsman's Ace. And so shopping around online on the marketplace and on a couple of websites and distributors of Polaris that sell these machines around where I lived, a friend of mine named JT offered up a pickup truck that he happened to not want anymore. A 1988 Jeep Comanche. I think it was the Pioneer long bed version. Didn't run, but you know, Jeep Comanches were pretty rare, and so he asked if I would give him $1,000 for it. Now, the Jeep Comanche is a special vehicle to me because I've always liked the Jeep XJs. I think we even had like the little Hot Wheels or Matchbox cars Jeep XJ, and I remember being very fond of them. But when I was like 10 or 11 years old, I seen one driving down the street, and I was like, hey, that's a Jeep XJ, but with like a truck bed in the back. And somebody told me, yeah, they make that one. I can't believe you didn't know that existed. So from then on, that was my favorite truck since I was like 10, all the way until now, and I'm 39. So, 29 years. That's been my favorite truck. So when I was 28 years old and my friend JT offered his Jeep Comanche that needed to be built or gotten running or whatever, I was like, yeah. So I had him bring it to my house. I think I gave him an extra $100 or maybe something like that. Gave him the $1,000 and I got the title, and honestly, The Jeep Comanche sat at my sister's place for like a year and a half, maybe 2. I did go and work on it, but being older, working in the heat, it's tough. And in the summer times, down in the valley, it can get up to like 120. I've seen up to 130 almost degrees. The hottest I've ever seen actually is 129. It was record breaking, but honestly, after 110 degrees, it doesn't matter. You might as well be in the oven. So I worked on it here and there, and my original plan was to get it running and go have fun with it. But then I saw that I could get a good deal on a long arm kit, and so I bought a long arm kit for it and I put that on there. I still didn't have the engine running, but I did all the troubleshooting to get the engine running. I had good fuel pressure. I pulled the fuel injectors out and made sure the fuel was coming out. I had good spark. I had air. The crank position sensor was working. The coil was working. Everything on this engine was working the way it was supposed to, and I just couldn't figure it out. And I'm a professional mechanic, not a very good one, but I ended up calling my friend Zach, and later on, Zach has become a great advisor for building things for off-road because he builds vehicles for off-road. And he said, make sure when you have the valve cover off that the lifters aren't collapsed, because that could mean that it has a bad oil pump. Sure enough, he came over, we looked at it, and most of the lifters of that 4.0 Renix engine were collapsed, meaning we didn't know how long this engine ran without oil, because if it got low enough to not open those valves enough, then chances are it's been a while. So instead of trying to overhaul the 4.0, I kind of talked myself into the might as well LS swap it trope of off-road building. And it just kind of chain reacted from there. Ripped out all the wiring, and I decided I'm going to rip this thing down, and it's just going to be, I'll build a trail truck out of it. So didn't get to drive it, and to me, I didn't know it then, but it would be 3 years before I got to drive it. Now, though I had a good job, I didn't have a ton of money to put into it because I didn't want to go into debt. So every time I got a little extra money, I would buy some more stuff for the Jeep. I bought some Ford F100 axles on it, which got me a Dana 44 up front and a Ford 9-inch in the back. And then I bought a house. Borrowed a trailer, and I picked up my Jeep, and I picked up all my things from like 5 different places in the city, and I moved everything up to where I live now, and I put the Jeep in the shop that came with the house. And that's when it really spiraled, because I got the LS engine in somewhere along the way of me being at my sister's house and being in my new shop. I started making videos because I remember since maybe 2007 or 2008 or 9, I think since maybe 2010 or 2011, I have been a huge fan of Bleep and Jeep. Bleep and Jeep built a Jeep Comanche, my favorite truck, for a little less than $10,000, I think. He went and bought a donor vehicle and put full-size axles on it, and he did a Chevy V8 engine in it. I think it was a 4Tech engine. Not sure what year, but that thing was pretty cool. Did a really neat cage, made some racing skins out of the bedside, so it kind of looked natural. Even had that classic 3-color pinstriping that swoops down. You've probably seen this vehicle that I'm talking about. So I set out to make a Jeep Comanche trail truck, just like the several copious amounts of RC trucks that I've built. All in all, I think I spent about $22,000 on my dream truck, which includes building the axles as beefy as you can build a Dana 44 and a Ford 9-inch. Putting a radiator in the rear, doing LS6 parts on the Jeep, putting LS6 parts on the LS53 engine that I had, doing all the winch and the bead locks and the tires and everything all together cost about $20,000 to $22,000. That's expensive, but as I come to a finish with this Jeep Comanche, I look up what a new Polaris side-by-side cost, and it's actually more than what I spent building this thing. So, pound for pound, I'm actually money ahead than if I had bought one. And I managed to buy a trailer and a used truck to pull it all for still less than a brand new Razor. So about a year into my YouTube channel, which was inspired by Bleep and Jeep's channel, among others, I decided to apply to be a Bleep and Jeep partner. Bleep and Jeep did like my videos, but it was at a time in his channel where he was kind of pulling away from doing partnerships. So I decided that I honestly really like doing YouTube, and I'm going to continue doing what I'm doing. So I kind of became good acquaintances with Matt along the way. And as a patron, I was able to go on one of his Patreon rides in Utah right after Matt's Off-Road Games 2025. That was a huge success. With my trial runs in that Jeep here in Arizona and fixing the couple of things that broke, I was able to go up all the obstacles that I tried, and it was quite scary, but I had some good ground guides, and I got to meet some cool people, and I got some cool videos out of it. And that honestly pretty much wraps up the whole story of the Jeep Comanche. So you probably don't know me, but if you did, you would know that I like to do things a little bit differently. And so now I'll tell you a couple of my favorite parts of my Jeep. And that's like, so in mud trucks, they like to take the Chevy intake manifold and flip it around backwards so that they can shove the filter into the cab and protect it from all the mud that gets slung around the front of the engine. I kind of did the same thing, but I went into the cab and then 90'd over into a Coleman cooler, and then I accessed the air from where the AC gets its intake right from the cowl above, above the dash. And it works pretty good. And it almost kind of works like your cold air system. Another favorite project on that Jeep I did was bobbing the bed down. I actually cut the bed into 7 different pieces. I cut the wheel wells out first. I took the bed off and I stood it up so it's vertical. And then using a laser level, and without moving the bed at all, I drew a line all the way around it in one spot, and then moved the laser level 2 feet down, drew another line all the way around it, and I actually cut 2 feet out of the middle of this bed. And then I just cut some new openings and put the wheel wells back into it. Overall, I only had to do like 1 foot of body work with like Bondo and paint. The rest was in the bed, and I ended up covering that up with some type of seam sealer. I actually think I used like roofing caulk, but it worked just the same. And then bed lining over it just kind of made it disappear anyway. And then after I made the bed all pretty, I decided to cut some holes in it and put my shock absorbers through the bed sticking out, because my shock absorbers needed to be really long in the back to get the proper amount of travel that I wanted. Andy Carter from Ironman 4x4 Fab makes the rear brackets for 4 links on the Jeep Comanche, and they're the best 4 links because they're flush mounted with the bottom of the frame, and they don't stick down so they can grab stuff. You could get universal 4-link brackets for the rear of any vehicle, but they're going to stick down below the frame. And the way he designed his was their lower link is going to be flush with the bottom of the frame so that things can slide off it, and then the upper link has a tower that it bolts to. That's really, really cool. You should check him out. But built some links and did the rear stuff, and then my shock absorbers actually stick through the bed. And yes, I did do spring coils on all four corners because it works so well on Rory's Jeep, which is compassionately named the $12 buggy. And in case you're living under a rock, Rory is the guy who has the channel Trailmater. So tell me what you think. I would like to know your questions. I love answering questions through the comments, but it would be really cool to answer some questions through video or podcast because it would give me more content to put out there on this channel. If you're watching this channel and haven't seen the Black and Blue Garage channel, that's really weird to me because I haven't advertised this one at all. And I don't think the algorithm works, to be honest with you. But if you haven't seen my main channel, it is Black and Blue Garage, Black and Blue Garage LLC. That channel is freshly monetized, and I do sell things like this hat, some shirts to match, and, you know, I just put out free videos. I kind of hope that it becomes a thriving business, but for now, I'm just kind of happy to have all my new friends and get to build some cool stuff. And that brings us to season 2 of Black and Blue Garage. We are building a Isuzu Amigo, and I want to tell you all about it, but it's nearly half finished, and I don't want to give away anything. So make sure you like, subscribe, and come back to this channel when I post new videos to learn more about that. And don't forget, ask me questions. God bless, and I'll see you next video. So should I go like bright white or like a blue, or like maybe half, like a little bit blue, white, blue, white, blue, 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 blue. I like blue, but it kind of looks like I'm looking at a blue screen. I really need to paint this place.